Alright, everybody, how we doing today? So, probably gonna shave soon, leave only the chin scruff, maybe. Uh, this is from Reason.com, and it says, to stop mass shooters, Trump says we should make involuntary psychiatric treatment easier. No, we shouldn't. I agree. Because psychiatrists are terrible at predicting violent behavior. The wilder net would catch lots of harmless people. Indeed. Guns don't kill people, says the old NRA slogan. People kill people. Yesterday, while responding to the mass shooting that killed 22 people in El Paso and 9 in Dayton over the weekend, Donald Trump offered a dubious variation on that theme. Mental illness and hatred pull the trigger, not the gun. Although the president's speech was scripted, that line was illogical as well as ungrammatical. For one thing, I've never heard anyone claim that the gun pulls the trigger. And I'm not sure how that would work in a non-cartoon universe. For another, it is plainly not true that mental illness and hatred pull the trigger, or do anything else for that matter. We should not lose sight of that fact, that mass murder is a volitional behavior, as tempting as it may be to speculate about the killer's motives or mental state. The president offered two theories. We must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence, and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary, involuntary confinement, he said. But Trump also decried the racist hate that seems to have inspired the El Paso shooter. In practice, those two explanations may be hard to disentangle. These are sick people, Trump's chief of staff Mick Mulvaney told ABC News on Sunday. He added, referring to the El Paso shooter, "You cannot be a white supremacist and be normal in the head." Mulvaney thereby demonstrated the malleability of psychiatric diagnosis and the danger of letting them determine who shall be free and who shall be subjected to involuntary confinement. Under current law shaped by civil libertarian concerns about that danger, states generally have to show by clear and convincing evidence that a candidate for commitment because of mental illness poses a danger to himself or others. Now let me be clear. He says you cannot be a white supremacist and be normal in the head. I disagree. You can still be very normal in the head and be a white supremacist, whatever normal in the head even means these days. That's becoming more and more tenuous as time goes on. Hey, just saying. But honestly though, when it really comes right down to it, the ultimate cause of mass shootings is radicalization. And that can be proved no better than by the statements of the Dayton shooter, who turned out to be a far leftist and may have blown some dog whistles. I not necessarily believe in dog whistles per se, but some of the language he used in his statements were very much in line with that of Antifa, a far-left radical terrorist organization. It's radicalization that causes mass shootings. It's radicalization, as well as the radical person himself perceiving some moral failure from their point of view on the part of the government and the state. They get stressed out, they're at the end of their rope, they don't know what to do, so they turn to violence. Because they believe so wholeheartedly in these radical ideas. It's radicalization and desperation. They mix. And it's a volatile combination, believe me. A belief in white supremacy or any other aberrant ideology is not enough to meet that test. Even though it might occasionally motivate murderous violence, the risks of going down that road should be obvious to anyone who values freedom of conscience and freedom of speech. While Trump seems to think it should be easier to lock people up and forcibly subject them to psychiatric treatment, the clear and convincing standard of proof is, according to the Supreme Court, required by the Fourth Amendment. The thing to be proven, however, varies from state to state. So there's some room for adjustment there. Under Florida's Baker Act, for example, the state has to show by clear and convincing evidence that there is a substantial likelihood a candidate for commitment will, because of mental illness, inflict serious bodily harm on himself or others in the near future. Alabama similarly requires a real and present threat of substantial harm to self and others. Massachusetts, by comparison, requires a substantial risk of physical harm to self or others. Without reference to time, a New York standard is similar. When Trump says we should reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence, he may have in mind loosening the standards for commitment by reducing the requisite level of risk or imminence of harm. But that would not really better identify potential killers. It would just cast a wider net, ensnaring more harmless people as well as perhaps more people with homicidal tendencies. For what it's worth, this is the end of the article, Columbia psychiatrist Michael Stone estimates that 1 in 5 mass murderers shows evidence of psychosis, which does not necessarily mean mental health specialists would have deemed them dangerous enough for commitment. Over 30 years of commentary, judicial opinion, and scientific review argue that predictions of danger lack scientific rigor. University of Georgia law professor Alexander Scher noted in a 2003 Hastings Law Journal article Scientific Review argued that predictions of danger lack scientific rigor. University of Georgia law professor Alexander Scher noted in 2003 Hastings Law Journal article Scientific Studies indicate that some predictions do little better than chance or lay speculation. Even the best predictions leave substantial room for error about individual cases. The sharpest critique finds that mental health professionals perform no better than chance at predicting violence, and perhaps perform even worse, since psychiatrists are terrible at predicting violent behavior. The potential public safety payoff from making involuntary psychiatric treatment a bit easier does not seem worth the cost, especially for one of the innocent people caught in the wider web. To be honest, I'm scared now, because I myself have been at least mildly mentally disturbed since I've been a child. I have a wide range of, phobias I need to admit to, including, spiders. Spiders, or as I like to call them, God's mistake. Monster hands. Ugh. But, yeah. So I'm a little afraid now. But they're right in stating that psychologists are very bad at pinning down violent behavior. Because psychology, the thing about psychology is its ultimate function is simply analysis, to analyze a person's personality, to identify a problem, and then propose a way in which that problem could be solved. But predicting the future violent behavior, what do you think? What do you think these psychologists are? Psychic? No. No. Trump clearly he's out of his element when it comes to this sort of thing. He does not know what he's doing. And when people blame mass shootings on violent video games and mental illness, chances are they don't know a damn thing about what they're talking about. They're idiots. Or they're ignorant. Or both. And what could be more dangerous than an ignorant idiot? I've already said my piece on what I think it is. And it would fit with the manifesto of the El Paso shooter. A radical who's married to his radical beliefs sees what the government is doing as from his perspective, a moral failure, and runs out of ideas and decides to turn to violence. Trump's out of his gourd.